So there's one more piece that we need to add to this. We've added in a little bit of layout and a bit of kind of text manipulation. Again, we've only done the basics of that, but you can add on to that knowledge. What we do need to do is kind of figure out a way to bring in the image side of it. I mean, if you look at some of the things in the Zen CSS site and compare it to what we have, the big difference at this point is the sort of decorative images. Now, some of that image work can be done in text and in inventive use of borders. We might touch on that briefly here, but a lot of it is done in actual kind of JPEGs, GIFs, PNGs that are loaded in through the CSS. So remember when we talked about this way back when, we said some of this is image, some of it is CSS. Let me show you an example. This is a site that I helped to run that looks at, it's a community of people looking at new ways that people are using digital media for learning. And if you look at this, there's quite a few images. There's this image, which is kind of the logo image. There's this image and some of the images that are part of the blog posts that are kind of added in. There are these little images that talk about resources and are icons for the resources. There are these kind of icons as well for newsletter, for RSS, for Twitter. And then there's the menu itself. And although this was not my decision, the menu is actually driven from images as well. These are not text, which is fine. They are images. I want to note that these images are kind of content, that these are images that really ought to be images that are in the HTML. And although it's a little fishy here because this is backed by a CMS, they're not part of a theme in this case. They are, in fact, part of the article itself. But this stuff is static, and it's important to kind of look at this and recognize what pieces of it are images and what are not. For example, the fact that this is gray and this is white, this is stuff that you do in terms of the background color of the various items. So if we took a look, for example, at these divs, we would see that that they are set with particular background colors, and that's how it's decided. Kind of how the white and the gray, how that's differentiated. However, there are elements here, for example, the small wraparounds on the top that are decorative and that are graphics, and they are not in the HTML. Likewise, these are not HTML IMG tags, image tags. So how is it that we get them in there? In fact, even though they're off to the side like this, these are background tags. They're part of the CSS and they're loaded in as backgrounds. So let's take a quick look at one of those. For example, if we look at the subscribe to newsletter, you'll see that we've got, this is kind of strangeness, but that's okay. You'll see that we've got a background that is a transparent URL, and the URL indicates the location of an image that's being loaded in as the background. So if we wanted to see the image that's being used, let's take a quick look at this background tag. It says it's transparent. That is that anything that is transparent in the image will still show through, and you can see what's behind it. It says that we're loading in the image from a URL. It's this PNG right here. Notice when you do this, when you do the slash, it means go to, in this case, dmlcentral.net /site/all/theme/dmlcentraltheme/images/icon newsletter. So it goes to that file. It says no repeat. If that's a repeat, it would tile the image. In this case, I guess we're looking at the newsletter image. We would have a whole bunch of letters going all the way across this div. We don't want that. So we want no repeat, and it's a scroll 00, which means we want to see the first one there. So let's take a look at what that image is real quick. So this is the image, just that little image back there. And it gets loaded in as part of the background of this div. You can see, and the text starts a little bit in here. So all we do is we make sure that we are starting, we have lots of padding here on the left-hand side, and then the image ends up in the very first slot. So it's when you see little icons like that, it's fairly frequent that they are, same is true down here, that they're part of the div and they're just part of the background. Rather than being in the HTML itself, because it's decorative, it's part of the CSS. It's loaded in as a background image. I want to touch on this as a special case up here. Let's take a look at what this is. So this is the about. Notice that as you roll over these, that changes. Now you could do a lot of this. In fact, you could do much of this using just text and the hover command, and there, or hover selector. But we're not going to. We haven't done that here. If we click on this, you'll see that we do have a transparent URL again. It's the same deal. Let's pull that up real quick, and I think you'll be a little surprised at what that image looks like. So this is that image. It actually has the entire menu bar and the entire menu bar. But what we've done here, and if you take a look here, you'll see that there's a background position of -165, and that the width is 76. So what that means is that we've moved the entire image over and are windowing a little tiny bit of it so that we can use just a little bit of that image. Now, that might seem a little weird, right? We bring in this huge image and we only use a little window of it, and we kind of slide it around to the place that we want on the sprite. And that seems like it's a little counterintuitive because we're trying to make our images as small as possible. However, if you take a look, you'll see that we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 menu items. And in fact, those rollovers, remember, are a second set. So we have a total of 12 different images. And it is much faster to load in one image and just use little pieces of it using CSS than it is to bring in an entire, ask the server 12 times, bring down an image, bring down an image, bring down an image. That takes, even if they're tiny images, takes much longer. So it turns out this is a much faster way to do things. So particularly for menus, you'll see the use of this CSS sprite, the use of a single image, or for icons, for example, a single image and you're taking out a little piece of it. It's complicated to do the first time. You have to bring it into Photoshop. You have to figure out what the offset is, how far over you need to position the background using background position. But that's worth it because you kind of, if you're doing something and you know you're going to use it as a menu bar, it makes sense to do it that way. All right, so let's take a look back at ours at the site we've been working on. I cleaned it up a little. I did do absolute positioning. I brought it up here. I took away our borders. Let's start with a little bit of a background. So we go ahead and we'll add in that background on the as a body tag because we're gonna put a background on the entire body. So we'll use body as selector. When we don't see the image, we want the background to be white, and we'll go ahead and layer on top of that the image that we've created, which is just a gradient that I kind of put together in Photoshop and burned the edges a little bit. We want it to not repeat because it'll look weird if it does. So basically I've said let's put in a background with a white background with this image. So this gives it a little bit of more of a textured feel in the background without being, well, it's a little heavy-handed, but that's okay. And now I want to kind of move this over a little bit and put this image right next to it. So this image is 95 by 95. I think that'll work without being too much trouble. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what this element is that we're looking at here. It's this one right here, and you'll see that that's the H1. But I'm going to use page header because that's this whole bit, and I think I want the whole thing to move over a little. So we'll do a quick new section down here for that. We'll start just with doing a background. We'll do the URL. It's a transparent image. One of the nice things about PNGs is that we can keep it transparent so it won't mess with our, hopefully, background that we already have. So that's not really what we were going for, obviously. The problem is that it's kind of in the way of the rest of it. I don't know how much space we have to move this over, but why don't we go ahead and move it over? So here's the question, how do we move that over? Well, we already know. The box goes like this, and we want space over here, so what we're looking for is padding. We know that it's 95 pixels, so we can probably guess that we want about 100 pixels. So there we go. So we've got the background image and this image. All right, see you next time.